Welcome back to the Wealth Witches podcast. I'm your host, Katelyn Magnuson. Today we have a special guest, Jenn Cohen. Jenn has always been captivated by the power of intuition. After a life-changing experience in her 20s, she explored how intuition could shape her life and career. During her 27 years in the entertainment industry, Jenn found that intuitive decisions often led to success. Now an intuitive consultant, she helps individuals and organizations unlock potential, gain clarity, and achieve their goals through practical, intuition-based strategies. Jenn's work fosters growth, creativity, and purpose in both personal and professional realms. Jenn, I'm so excited to have you today. Thank you for joining.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
And we're going to have a really special topic today. We're going to be chatting about why companies should be integrating intuition for more engaged, aligned teams, which is something that's of great interest to me. So I'm thrilled.
Awesome. Me too. It's fun to talk about.
Yeah, I'd love to know a little bit more about your background for the listeners that are here that may not know you.
Yeah, so I spent 27 years in the entertainment industry. That ranged from film to production to television to corporate. And most of my positions sat firmly in between the creative side of the house and the corporate side of the house. And so it's actually in this new part of my journey. I left the corporate side of the entertainment world. Gosh, it's almost 7 years ago now, and became an intuitive consultant and channel. And what that means is that I'm able to talk with people on the physical plane, but also connect with a different dimension, connect with a different plane of communication, our collective consciousness. And so little did I know, but as I was doing that through my, corporate job in entertainment, I was actually that middle space between the language of operations, the language of the critical mind, and the creative mind, in more of the artistic, in more of the writers, in more of the development, in more of the actors space. And so that journey allowed me to be able to mesh those two worlds and see profound spikes in financials, profound spikes in employee retainment, and it continues today, just in a way that I show up with those folks.
How did you, I hate to say the word discover, but discover or uncover that this was, a talent of yours?
Yeah, it's funny. I had a really profound experience when I was 20 years old. My dad passed very suddenly, and the night of his funeral, we grew up Jewish, and so that we were sitting Shiva, and in the front of the house was, much more of the traditional way of grieving. And I was grateful for that, but I personally needed to move to the back of the house and be alone. And I was lying on my dad's side of the bed in my parents' room. It was pitch black. And I was kind of calling out and saying, like, how am I going to get through this? What happened? And again, pitch black, the light next to the bed flashes on and off and on and off. And I look to the light, which is off now. And I look over at the light in complete darkness. And I said, Dad, is that you? Flashed on and off and on and off. And so it was in that moment that I'm like, okay, there's two kind of different ways we can get answers, and that we can soothe ourselves, and that we can communicate. And from that point on, it was just like, well, that's real. That's real, And I think I'm very lucky in that I just trusted and believed from that moment
Mhm.
on. And my dad continued to show me signs. I handed over to him my profession because in the grief stage, I got very angry. And I said, you left too early, all these milestones. You're going to handle my professional career. And he took that on. And so it was this trust. And so when I would go into the corporate space and I got my jobs, and that doesn't mean that it was always easy, but I always knew that it would work out. I just could understand the Shiva side of the house and the back room side of the house. And it's like, this is what people need in order to feel safe and comfortable and comforted. And then you've got people that don't necessarily need physical.
Right.
Yeah. So
That's so interesting.
yeah, kind
You're
of,
like, Dad, you did this. How dare you? You get to run everything
yeah,
professionally now. Make it happen.
yeah.
What has that looked like for you in terms of when you were working in entertainment? And I know you said that you were seeing, financial benefits or all these other benefits of you sort of bridging these two sides of the industry. What did that actually look like in practice for you?
Yeah, so I was never one for a big job description. And I understand you need them. I understand you need them, but even before I was a high level executive when I decided to leave, and that was about 10 years of my life in Manhattan, New York. I live in
Okay.
California now, and before I moved to New York. Even when I was starting out, and I started out as an assistant in the publicity department at DreamWorks Animation the first year that they were open. And
Oh, very cool.
I mean, it was just like,
Yes.
what are you talking about? Like, this is fifth year of college, like unreal experiences. And what the job description was, I saw it, but when I interviewed for it, it wasn't something that I was really tied to. And again, in that circumstance, it was dreaming, no pun intended, but it was literally dreaming. And it was just how exciting is this new playground that we all get to play in.
Hmm.
And when I would tap into my intuition and when I would tap into that knowing, it didn't matter what was on that job description. I could see a white space and I could see something that was calling me. Oh, I'm going to make this into my own. I'm going to talk with these people. I'm going to follow those nudges and I'm going to take a meeting with so and so. I'm going to have lunch with so and so and just learn about them. And then the path starts to open up. It doesn't
Hmm.
mean that you're stepping on other people's toes. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about listening to that inner guidance of, that sparks some curiosity in me. I'm not just going to let that die. I'm going to actually follow that trail a little bit.
Right.
And so by the time that I got more in my executive levels, and this is just a really solid example, is when I was hiring for an assistant in the recruiting department would keep giving me resumes of people that had done the job, but to different extremes.
Hmm.
And I got a resume from someone in the group of a person that had never worked in the corporate space before, but had worked, in professional environments, but just not entertainment corporate. And she walked in and I knew immediately. I'm like, this is my person. And I was talking with recruiting and they're like, no, no, she doesn't have the,
Hmm.
qualifications.
Hmm.
I said, well, that's nice, but she's my hire. And they said, well, we want to start her off at the very lowest, pay.
Hmm.
No, absolutely not. She's got this credential. So that's how, I showed up with it. It was noticing kind of old stories, noticing old policies, and then going with, this is what my intuition is telling me. This is the feeling. This is the knowing. That assistant was coveted by every single executive there. They're just like, how she is the best, you know, and and
Hmm.
and
You're like, yeah, I know.
yeah, I know. So that's just a couple examples.
I love that. I'd be really interested in your definition or version of what intuition looks like because I think for a lot of people that I've talked with, there's, a gut feeling. It's different for everyone. So when you're saying intuition and you're saying, leaning into those nudges or leaning into that curiosity, what does that look like for you? Or what does it look like for the clients that you work with a lot of times?
Yeah, so I actually love the Oxford Dictionary definition of this, which is not something that comes out of my mouth very often. But they say it's the ability to understand something without conscious reasoning.
That is a nice definition.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, it's really to the
Hmm.
point, and I think it's
Hmm.
I think it's exactly right. It's that knowing. It's just that knowing. And where we get tripped up is trusting that knowing. And that's,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah.
So, when it comes to using intuition in your business, what does that look like? Because again, I have my own version of this and getting more comfortable with my own intuition and following those nudges. And luckily, I have a husband who very grudgingly at the beginning, but much less so now, yeah, your gut intuition, your gut nut, whatever it is, you're always right, which is, very validating to hear. But in the
Mhm.
moment that, it's caused us to move, we've, listed our house and sold it and everything worked out really well, but it seemed a little, I'm going to say harebrained at the time, maybe, but those have really served me well. So that's been more in the personal side of things. I'd be really interested in how you see that play out with business owners and teams specifically.
Yeah, yeah. And I've got a million personal ones. It's how I'm sitting in my house right now after so many people are like, do not do that, you know? It's just like, oh, that's great. That's fun for you. So in the business sense, when I left my very high paying job, I'll just say,
Hmm.
you know, in the executive world of entertainment, I was taking a big leap. I was literally taking a big leap. And there was a cost reward to that.
Yeah.
And the cost would have been continuing down a path that was becoming a person I didn't recognize, becoming a person I didn't love, and dreading waking up each day. But I would have had some coin. I would
Right.
have, you know,
Right.
yeah. And so the trust that my purpose in this world had shifted from, you know, I was never hired for my PowerPoint skills. Let me just say that, you know, there, my,
Fair.
my way of communicating with people was, I would say, what got me to where I was. For the most part. And so it was extremely evident to me that that was going to continue and I
Hmm.
would still have these skills. It would be presenting it to a new audience that was even more susceptible and more willing to understand it and to embrace it. And when I took that leap, it was very evident to me that I needed to believe that first. And so, in your business, if you're having some blocks around having new clients, around launching something, your intuition is trying to tell you something. Your intuition is guiding you to resolve that dissonance that is happening.
Hmm.
And it is an amazing tool that we all possess. We all have intuition, not just women. And, you know, it's referred to a lot as our sixth sense. I believe it's our first sense that we were born into this world with. And it's not our job to have to hunt down or track down our intuition. It's really our responsibility to place ourselves in situations to hear it. And so that resistance, if you're in a space of resistance in your business, then there is a tipping point that you're at that your intuition is really trying to tell you something. I just had this recently with a big presentation I'm getting ready to
Hmm.
give. And it was like I would find every way to procrastinate against this. I mean, even things as like exercising, you know, where it's like, you know,
Right.
it's a healthy habit, but it's pulling me away from getting my butt in the seat and doing
Hmm.
that. And I was resisting this big next presentation that is going to bring in many more clients. And there's a part of me that is scared to death of that. And so being able to uncover that and correct it, these are the breadcrumbs that our intuition is telling us every single day to get us to, you know, what we've plugged in of our intention for our business. You know, it's just like the GPS. You know, you put in the destination and here's all the turns that you have to make to get there. And this was one of them. This was a big hill for me. But now I see it. And now I've carved out the time. And now I've had a talk with myself of, okay, you know, the universe is showing up with this opportunity. You know, what are you resisting?
So in your case, if you're comfortable sharing with that,
Yeah.
you were able to, lean into that or figure out, hey, I'm doing everything that I can in my life to procrastinate this because I have been there, and you figured out what it's telling you. How do you take, aligned action once you figure out, hey, this is going to bring in a lot more clients and I'm resistant to that. What are you doing then with that information?
So then it's a very real conversation. And one thing I'll say is that this is, you know, intuition doesn't often get loud or urgent, but it does repeat itself and
Hmm.
it'll show up in different ways. You know, this last way that really got my attention was through my body, where my body's like, I'm tired. I don't want to go exercise again. In fact, I'm going to give you an ailment, you know, to get you to
Hmm.
stop. And it's fascinating. That's our bodies are amazing. And so when that aha moment happened, and it happened in conversation actually with my trainer, it was okay. my passion for what I do and where I want to be, what I have been dreaming about, what I have started this business about, it is literally right in front of me.
Hmm.
Do I want to delay that? Do I want to shun that and go back to a 9 to 5 corporate job? Do I want to do that? And it's that discussion, that U-turn that I have with myself that says, no, sit your ass down, set a timer,
Hmm.
and go. And it opens up so much. And it is like, this tantrum that I'm throwing as a toddler. Now
Hmm.
I don't want to, I don't want to, I don't want to. And it's just like, Jenn, sit down. you know,
The
and
timer is real. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. The timer's real, and I go past the timer.
Yeah.
Once you start getting into it, it's just like
Yes.
getting yourself to the gym. It's all of that. The starting is the hardest part. All of those, cliches, but it's true. It's true. And so it's really getting very honest with yourself and seeing that my intuition is not letting me down. The universe is not letting me down. The energy around this is real. I am in resistance. Let me just surrender. Let me receive. Let me just start. And
Hmm.
then the validations start coming, and it's quick.
Hmm. I was laughing at your physical ailment, not that you ended up
Yeah.
having to get to that spot, but
Yeah.
one of the biggest things that we ever did that was a trust the process moment, I shattered my ankle in 2019 in a freak accident and ended up unable to weight bear for 12 weeks. I am a very, even though I work from home, I work remotely, you would hypothetically think that was fine. It's difficult to get to the kitchen to get snacks. I'm home all day sitting on the couch with my brain. And it was really interesting to me to have that space because we'd been talking about moving for years and years and years, and it was just never the right time and never, well, I don't know if we can. And I was like, you know what? We're just going to start the process. So my husband had come home one day. I was like, I called a realtor. They're going to come out and look at the house. He's like, you did what?
Mhm.
Our house was sold and we were moved and had purchased another house in 2 months. We moved out, staged, moved in with in-laws. Keep in mind, all while I'm not weight bearing. So bless him
Yeah.
because he did. He's like, you did this on purpose. Like you couldn't help. Load boxes. I was like, hey, touring houses in a walking boot and crutches was not what my goal
Yeah.
was here. But it was interesting because once I had that space created to just have the brain time and be able to listen and not, I feel like, fill my life with so many different ways that I was procrastinating, it was a very interesting. Do I try and listen a lot more now before we get to broken ankle territory? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because that was not my preferred way of listening, but it also yielded some really good results.
Absolutely. 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 And we get just so stuck in our patterns. And I'm guessing that there were many clues before you shattered your ankle. Yeah. Yeah. She's nodding.
Yes. Yes, there
Yeah.
really were.
Yeah. But again, sometimes that's just what we need. What we need.
A very nice loud wake up call. So
Yeah.
for business owners that are listening to this, and whether they have, whether it's just themselves getting started, or maybe they have a couple of contractors, or maybe they actually are building out their team with employees, I feel like we've sort of danced around the why here, but why should they be incorporating intuition? And how is that going to help them have more aligned, more integrated teams and workplaces?
Oh, sure. Well, intuition's energy. Energy, we're all energy, and energy is the strategy. So if you have a team and there's discord in the team, there's going to be discord in your flow. And there's going to be hurdles in order for your success, for your business to be a success, in order for money to flow in. And it's through the intuitive state, and we can even say soft skills, but intuition is part of that. It's part of that creative mindset that you're going to get in line, that the vibration is going to get in line. And depending on the size of your team or if it's just you, finding that flow, I always start with businesses and with groups with the intention.
Mhm.
And without fail, it'll go into goals first. But we have to come back to that intention. And that intention informs everything because it's much more expansive. It's much more flow state
Mhm.
and it's much less ego. Ego is important. We know that. But what that does is it gives us a higher self. And again, that's the intuition part to come back to. And it's undoubtedly universal across the team. So the team can come back to that. Now, each individual person can have their intention, and we go through that as well. But as a group, it is important. I just worked with a company that the department was the events department, and they were just getting back into in-person events after the pandemic. But
Right.
during the pandemic, they had allowed everyone to work from wherever they wanted. And so now they were trying to get people back into the office, but there was a couple people that had moved out of state, and that was okay. I think that this is pretty common with the intention of this particular department, which was in-person events
Mhm.
and what that was communicating for the company and for their audience and for the joy and for the camaraderie and for the experience. Okay, that was going to be their intention. And when you have somebody that had moved out of state that wasn't physically able to come in, okay, how are they relating to that intention? And it doesn't mean that they have to move back, but there are certain actions that then they're more willing to come to the table with as a team rather than you're just telling me I need to come back after you told me that I could move. So we take
Mhm.
out the very personal of it and we go to the collective, which is where our intuition lives. It's not in a he's right, she's right, judgment, fear-based, cautious, seeks differences way. It's
Mhm.
coming into this really imaginative part of our brain where we can say, oh, here's the way that we can, get over this hurdle. And if we can't, then let's take a look at it and see, where this person's going to thrive if it's within this company or outside of the company.
Right, right. It allows, I think you described it really well, taking the ego out of it, because I think so many times it's really easy to get wrapped up in the ego or the goal and coming back to that intention and the baseline. And I feel like they can be conflated sort of as the two, being similar. And while they may have some similarities, they're not at the end of the day. And I do think that's a really interesting take to look at it. When you come in and you talk to a business and they're, wanting to bring intuition in and maybe they haven't in the past, what does that transformation, look like for some of the clients that you've worked with from, and I'm sure, transformations are never done, but
Mhm.
from when you started or right before you started to kind of where they are, I don't know, 3, 6, 9, 12 months down the road.
Sure, sure. It varies. I would say the clarity. The clarity is the biggest thing. And where we start is a 180 from where we end because it's usually extremely ego driven at the beginning. And it makes sense. That's how
Mhm.
most of us have been brought up and raised. And, the old stories of grinding and like all the blood, sweat, and tears, and nothing, worthwhile comes easy.
Right.
And so it's breaking down a lot of these old constructs and the way in which a lot of us grew up and the transformation of, the new generations coming in and what they believe and their value systems. And a belief is something that may or may not be true, but your values are always true. And so, when I'm working with executives, it's really taking a look at, some of the systems that they have in place
Mhm.
and why they have them in place. And if they're based off of a fear, scarcity, fear, I'm going to lose my job, I'm not going to, the numbers aren't going to add up, da, 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 we start to break that down. And what that does is opens up a much more, Brene Brown talks about vulnerability, so amazing. But what it does is it creates a coherence between that executive and their team. And when we have that coherence, and it comes from the heart, when we have that heart coherence, oh my God, it's like, a beautiful orchestra playing together. And so it is a shift in mindset of a very masculine way
Mhm.
of operating. And as we're in this much more divine feminine energy, really shifting in there. And depending on how open a person or a company is, those steps differ.
Okay.
We can jump right in, or it's much more of a baby stepping of let's I would like you to try this tactic and see how that goes, and then you can see the results for yourself. And then there are some people that are like, let's meditate at the beginning of this meeting. Oh my God, yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it varies, but clarity, I would say, is the biggest thing. I've seen transformation just in terms of financials, in terms of gaining clients, in terms of expanding teams and also
Mhm.
reducing teams, in terms of people coming to the realization of their own that they're ready to maybe, depart a company, in terms of people starting their business, in terms of people getting the courage to start to think about starting their own business and what an entrepreneur looks like. Because again, when I was growing up, that was not a thing. And so it varies. All of those things have happened. And it's so personal and it's so custom, just like our intuition is, but there are universal steps in order to get there.
What a rewarding set of experiences to have gone through. That sounds really just fulfilling to
Yeah.
be able to experience and facilitate. For someone that, maybe they're aware of their intuition, but maybe they're not really feeling tuned in, or they feel like it's really easy to just get sucked into, I call it girl boss hustle culture, right?
Yeah.
Where, you're grinding. What are some recommendations or spots where they could get started to be able to tap back in or tune back into their intuition?
Yeah, and I would start with that girl boss hustle. That is a beautiful rebranding of an old story. And that is literally taking a very masculine way of applying it with some cool new terminology, right? But the intention of what they're trying to do is where we would start. Some really simple, easy ways. And I would love your listeners just to really take a moment here and feel into their body, because this is where your tuning fork is. When your mind starts to say, that's dumb, that's not going to work, that's hocus pocus, it's too simple. But the easiest way to get into your intuition is to be present, because presence, that's the only way that you can access your intuition. The minute that you're in the future or past, you're in anxiety or worry. So a really beautiful, easy grounding tool. If you can get out into nature, do that. First of all, nature is so healing. But even if you're in the office and you can't do that, take a step away from your computer and just kind of look around and name three things that you see. And you can even say, name three things that you smell, name three things that you hear, but it's a grounding practice to get you back in your body at that moment. That means that you're in the presence. This is where your intuition can find you. Then what you want to do is do things that get your energy much higher, into a higher vibration, and that's going to be different for lots of people. I love to hike. I love to be near the ocean. I love music. I love dance. I love Pilates as well. Some people like cooking, being in the car with the windows down. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. Poetry, writing, and noticing how your body feels in that moment. And in those moments, your intuition is always there, like we talked about. Your intuition is trying to get to you. So, in those moments when you are in those joyful experiences, being open, and you can even say, intuition, I'm open, drop in, and just kind of hear what you hear. And you can say, send me a sign. You can even name the sign that you would like to have. You can start really easy with, intuitive eating, which is when you wake up in the morning, body, what do you feel like eating right now? And really listen. A really easy way, that I do it is also like I intuitively know that I'm going to get an amazing parking spot when I pull up to that building. I'm handing that over to you, and you're going to tell me the route to get there and where to park. Like those are just very low hanging fruit,
Mhm.
but it's an exercise and it's a muscle that you need to just keep practicing and working at. And you're going to see those breadcrumbs. You're going to see the fruits of your labor. And when you do that, it gets stronger and stronger and stronger. And you're able to let it guide you just as much as your other senses, if not more.
I love that. Okay, those are really lovely, actionable steps for anyone that's listening and may have felt a little. I have a few people in mind that I've known in my life that have ended up, I mean, who hasn't at some point ended up in that toxic hustle culture and all the things we're told to do, and then gone, whoa, this is not how I want to be living my life. This does not feel good. So coming back out of that, I feel like can be difficult because you're sort of, floundering or spinning out, or you don't have all the things in your life to be doing it 24/7. So thank you for that. Are there any other, sort of parting words or things that you want someone to be thinking about when they're wanting to incorporate intuition into their business, into their life? And then if someone's interested in learning more about you or working with you, what are the best places to be able to interact with your, information and be able to chat with you further?
Sure. So I would say if you're hitting a roadblock right now, your intuition's trying to tell you something from a different perspective. It's as simple as that. And it is as simple as getting that guidance so that then you can start down that road. And it's a real quick pivot. And, when in knowing, you trust you're in knowing. It doesn't have a language. We give language to that knowledge. But in your body, you can feel a little bit more comfortable. You're not stressed and you're not constricted. And so if that resonates with you, and if that is something that you would just like to begin to explore, please reach out. I'm available my website is Jenn with two N's, CohenIntuitive.com. And there's a place to email me there too. And I could talk about this all day. So there's support, there's guidance from a higher perspective that sees it all very clearly. It's when we're here just, focused on the physical that it can cause a lot of restriction and unnecessary barriers.
Absolutely. I love that. Thank you so much, Jenn. I really appreciate it. And we'll make sure that your website is linked in the notes as well. So if anyone's wanting to go check you out, they're able to, because this was fantastic.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
That's a wrap for this episode of the Wealth Witches podcast. I hope our magical money talks have left you feeling empowered and inspired. Remember, wealth isn't just about dollars in the bank, it's about abundance and financial freedom in all aspects of your life. I'm Katelyn Magnuson, encouraging you to keep challenging the status quo and embrace your inner witch on this financial journey. Until next time, stay magical.